So it's the late 2000s. You want to buy an executive car, you've done your time with the Mondeos, the Lagunas, you're going up a notch, you're doing good at work. You could buy a 5 Series, you could buy an Audi A6, you could buy a Mercedes E-Class. And that's what most people did, but there were a special few who did something special. Got something a little extraordinary. Like this. This is the Honda Legend. And a special person indeed it took. Because despite that beautiful nose, Honda were asking people to part with 36 grand for one of these. A car which was marketed in the UK as not much more than a slightly bigger Accord. Yes, you got a beautiful hardback brochure and it shouted about a super handling 4-wheel drive system and all this massive tech, but we all know how difficult the market the UK was to break into at that time and to take attention away from the German execs, which really cornered the market. But if you take time to appreciate just what a brilliant car this is, and the fact that you can pick them up for absolutely nothing these days, I bought this one for £1,000. Then you're getting one hell of a car. So in the US and Canada, the Legend was marketed as the Acura RL, where it enjoyed much bigger success than it did here, because a 3.5 V6 is totally normal over there. 4-wheel drive is something they need. I know I'm driving this in the snow at the minute, but this is about the 5 days of the year that it will be driven in the snow. And you can tell it was a car made for the Americans. It makes bonging noises for no reason. My pathetic UK-sized coffee utterly disappears into the cup holder. Yes, you get a 3.5 litre V6 petrol engine producing 290 brake horsepower. That was your only option in the UK, which really hurt it, because at that time the UK government were so pushy with diesels, something which they've now U-turned on. People don't talk about that. So this today is £580 to tax, which is a lot of money, but when you're getting so much car for so little outlay, it's not a big price to pay. So, is it just a big Accord? No, so much more. This is one of the single most impressive executive cars that I've had. A real surprise. Just, there's something about Japanese cars that you expect to be a little predictable, samey, but certainly for the UK market, this car offers something really different to every other Honda. There's something really Lexus feeling about it, which I love Lexus, so that's a good thing. But it also has a good few shortcomings to give it a bit of character, such as the leather of this armrest that has just peeled away to nothing. The glove box is doing the same. The chrome peels on the grill of them hasn't started on this, but it does. Some of the controls do feel really cheap. It's got the same key as a Honda Jazz, but that's nothing new in the world of Japanese cars. You buy a Lexus RX, you get the same key as a Toyota Corolla. But there's so much tech in it, so much tech. This is a 2007 car. It's got collision mitigation, automatic braking, active cruise, lane keep assist. So it's got the super handling 4-wheel drive system, which I'm using in the snow, and it's absolutely fantastic. It's got this little torque gauge here which tells you which axle the most power is going to, what it's doing, all of that mad stuff. So we'll click snow, brings it up in the little display, off we go. Oh, just moves off so easily. So I've told it it's on snow. It's giving much more balanced torque distribution towards the front and the rear. I didn't actually realise there was a snow button on the dash, and it was kind of struggling to move off, and I was a bit miffed as to why it was doing that, but I guess you got to tell it. When a car comes marketed in the UK with a 3.5 V6, it's usually shouted about it. It's the range topper. It's got to make this fantastic noise. It's got to boast about its brake horsepower. It's got to have a really snappy gearbox. This doesn't. Yes, it's got 290 brake horsepower, but it delivers it in such a typically American way that it just doesn't feel quick. It's torquey. You know it's got power. You know it can move when you need it to. But it just doesn't shout about it. And even when you put your foot down, it's looking for the next gear. You know, it's letting you know that it can do it, but it doesn't really want to. All right, you've waffled enough. Show us the tech, I hear you say. Okay. Steering wheel moves. Typically American seatbelt reminder. Navigation system starting up. Up here you've got your controls for your climate control. CD changer, 6 discs, no auxiliary input, which is frustrating. And a whole mess of controls here for nav, everything else. Down here you've got your heated and cooled seats, the shifter, the concealed cigarette lighter, your humongous cup holders. That opens up like that, and like that. There's my code reader. Essential when you like bargain basement V6s. So have a look at this steering wheel. In total there are 18 buttons and 2 gear shifters. So over here you got your cruise, your adaptive cruise, switch it on like that. Brings it up in there when you've got up to speed. Trip computer, adaptive cruise, lane keep assist, back, voice control for the nav, Bluetooth call, and stereo. Buttons, more buttons. Snow mode, the dimmer. You've got your trip computer here, which you flick through with a little button on the steering wheel. I like to keep it on the torque control. Collision mid braking system off, stability control system off, and the intelligent front lighting system off. Automatic wipers, automatic headlights. You'll notice that the wipers are sitting up a bit. That's their winter setting so that they're not impacting snow on the way back down. If you push them back into place, they'll sit below the windscreen, and that's the summer setting. Mirror controls, memory for the seat, central locking, electric windows, auto dimming mirror. Up here you've got your courtesy lights, sunroof. This was their key to poaching a few E-Class buyers. And of course, so if the blind's up and you shift it into reverse, so clever. Backup camera, as well as sensors all around, but there's no visual display for the parking sensors. In the glove box, I love this. Release button, just in here. Here's your owner's manual. Not taking up room in the glove box. It's the little things that the Japanese do that just make me smile. Loads of rear legroom. Sun blinds. Leather trimmed ski hatch. Because why would you want to look at a bit of plastic? Look, see, it's quality like that that make up for that crappy jazz key. Here's a boot space. Electric steering wheel control. push for the parking brake, push to release. Okay, so this media menu here has got the same graphics as a PS1. Endlessly complicated, and it's the typical clumsiness you'd expect. Audio menu, same awful graphics. Subsection for climate. Trip computer, it's all quite primitive looking. So you've got this scattering of displays, this really good trip computer at the bottom of the Speedo, which tells you everything you need to know. But you can also access it here. And then you've got stuff, all these numbers piled on here as well. You've got the radio, you've got the climate on either side, you've got the time. You could tell that they knew how clumsy it was because they've got to put lines to tell you what everything is. And it just seems like it could have been tidied up a bit more. Then there's the nav, okay? Every time you get in, it starts up, you get the legal agreement, that's fine, there it is. On most cars, that disappears after 20-30 seconds. On this, if you don't agree by physically clicking OK, every single time you start the car, the display will just go blank. So every time you get in, you gotta hit this. Otherwise it just goes blank and remains off until you do that. So picture this. It's early morning, you got your coffee, caffeine's not kicked in yet. Jump into the Legend, it's nose in the driveway as it always is. Start it up. Listen to that. Can you hear that? Piercing through your head early in the morning. Parking sensors warning me that I'm too close to that hedge, even though I'm in park and I've just started the car. And unlike normal cars, there's no button to turn the parking sensors off, so you just gotta listen to it. Piercing through your head with no caffeine until you reverse away from the wall. So the collision mitigation braking system, it's got a camera up there, top of the windscreen in with the rain sensor, and this Honda badge apparently acts as a radar. So the lane keep assist, you click this little button on the steering wheel, you have to have both of your hands on the steering wheel. It completely deactivates if you take your hands off the wheel. It will not self-steer the lanes like a Tesla does. But if you have this active, it brings up lines here to represent that it recognizes you're in the lane, and then it gently steers you to keep you in your lane, as well as keeping you a safe distance from the car in front if you have the active cruise activated. It's just such a safe car to be in as well. You're constantly reminded that there's all this tech behind the scene, monitoring, making sure you're doing the right thing. I'm ready to step in when it's needed. The other day I was coming up behind a truck that was turning right, and he took a little longer to turn right than I thought. I knew I'd get past him, but he took a little longer. This thing slammed the brakes on, tugged me back with the seatbelt, and the dash just lit up, brake, brake! But it ended up doing it for me. It was also one of the first cars in its class to get the pop-up hood that when it senses you hitting a pedestrian, pops up to cushion their impact on the engine bay. Couldn't find a pedestrian who's willing to demonstrate this for you, but I'll try harder next time. It also shouts at you if you do this.
Please fasten your seatbelt.
Seeing as you asked so politely. It's all stuff that Honda were counting on that just didn't cut it. It struggled on until 2009 when it was eventually canned. But you know what? It marks that fantastic period of executive cars that the UK got but they didn't ask for. So I thought, given how US biased this car is, that it would be a big sloppy boat on the road. It's really not. It's a lot firmer than I expected. The steering has this fantastic weighted feel. I guess it all leads into this super handling four-wheel drive system, but it's a lot more of a driver's car than I expected it to be. despite the V6 being relatively lazy. It's just nice to drive something so unique and so ahead of its time, not to mention how much more reliable it's going to be than a 2006 A6. It has been marked one of the US's most reliable cars. And yes, it may cost 580 quid to tax and do 20 miles per gallon at best around town. But you're never going to have to replace a DPF, you're never going to have to replace injectors, you're not going to have to replace an EGR. And it's totally future-proof because the world is finally seeing sense and diesels are finally out of vogue.